This is Romona Hale-Coley. She is a Penn State grad, actually, an MBA, and she wrote a book on a self-help book on financial independence. I hope you guys enjoy this.
So, how can millennials make a difference? How can you all make a difference in this national debt problem? So as I talk about where we are economically right now, I just want you guys to think about that question. How can you make a difference? Because here's the thing, guys. Once you start seeing the magnitude of the problem, you're going to really feel like it's so enormous that there's really nothing that you can do, right? On an individual level, you feel like, what can I do? First of all, you guys, most of you aren't 21 years old yet, and you haven't figured out what you want to do in terms of, you may have some ideas in terms of what you want to do professionally, but how do I get young people, how do we get this whole entire net impact up to us? How do we get you guys to believe wholeheartedly that you really can make a difference, right? Because whenever, like I said, when you have an enormous problem, it's very difficult to really ignite the fact that you can make a difference. And so that's the first question. The second question is, why should I care, right? Because one, you haven't created the debt. You guys, like I said, you guys are maybe 20, 21, 19. You haven't created this debt, but the debt is here, so why should you care? And then thirdly, how is it going to impact you? I always like to look at a blueprint, right? Whenever we're learning something, if you guys, we just talked about the Super Bowl, right, Nick? Whenever we have, we have athletes, if they're training for a game, or if you're a boxer and you have a match, you're always looking at footage or what happened, or you're kind of looking at how can you improve. Greece is literally like the national blueprint for what a country should not do in terms of fiscal policies and economic disaster. So Greece basically had the largest sovereign debt default ever in history, right? Greece is a part of Europe, so they're all the United Nations. And so last year, in June, Greece actually became the first developed country to not repay the IMF, right, the International Monetary Fund. So basically they made history, and as a result, if any of you guys looked at the news, or if you Googled what was going on, or maybe some of your classes, you saw as a result, the banks closed. A lot of the banks closed because they literally ran out of money. Banks closed, and I remember seeing footage of people who weren't homeless, but they was devastated. They were literally laying out on the sidewalks because they felt like all hope was gone, because they had their savings in banks, and the banks literally ran out of money. Puerto Rico is heading down that horrible path, and Puerto Rico is $70 billion in debt, guys. And it always blows my mind when you first start thinking about $70 billion. $70 billion, guys, is going to be nothing when you start looking at how much debt we're in. But listen, the governor of Puerto Rico literally said, we're out of cash. We are out of cash. He said that he used the term, and I'll say it loosely, but he said that we've done enough gymnastics and acrobats trying to move money from one pocket to the other, trying to meet short-term debt. And he's like, at this point, we're out of tricks. Like, he literally said, we have no more money. We need assistance from the U.S. And so we must create a generation. I am a millennial. I was telling him I am a millennial. I made it by like 3 years. But anyhow, once we create a generation of consciousness, then together we can start to, basically at this point, it's about creating a culture. Because we have to literally individually, on an individual level, we have to start thinking about, how can I stop wasting, stop spending, so that collectively we become that generation of change. Why is the U.S. in so much debt? This is literally, for me, a depiction of why the U.S. is where it is. Because we've been just running on credit, and as we saw with Greece, when you're spending and spending and spending, and your revenue or your GDP is not growing at a rate that your expenses, over the long term, the debt is not sustainable. The problem is that Congress, the government, continues to pass fiscal policies that's calling for more debt, but we haven't been able to generate the economic growth to support the debt.